Welcome back, everybody. Again, I love the theme music. It's my favorite part of the show. No offense, Patrick. But welcome back, everybody, my plant lovers, some history buffs. Today we're trading in our time machines for a pair of gardening clogs as we explore America's oldest botanical garden, Bartram's Garden. Our hosts, Patrick Kelly and John Papp, are going to dig up some dirt, literally and figuratively, on this 50-acre treasure chest of nature. So grab your virtual sunscreen and get ready for some seriously leafy adventures. Let's go dig up the history. Just watch your step. We don't want you to trip over it.
I freaking love everyone. Round of applause for Maddie Fisher. Hey, I listen. Maddie's got the best intros in the entire industry. That's all I'm going to say. Am I right, John?
Absolutely. Although the sunscreen made me feel bad.
The sunscreen had me at hello. Yeah, Maddie, you would have kicked this off perfectly if you would have said, just everyone sunscreen their feet. Because John forgot to put sunscreen on his feet this weekend. And he has red feet. And how can you forget your toes?
Were you wearing flip-flops in the
no, I was barefoot at the beach.
Garden. At the beach.
That would have been a story.
He was barefoot and dangerous, everyone.
Oh really my goodness. It would have been funny if I had real sunscreen and I just started
I like how she was like, listen, when I put sunscreen on, I'm like putting it all in my hands and rubbing it. She's like, here we go. Man, I'm rubbing it through my hair. I'm just whatever. John didn't do any of that, Maddie.
Especially on his feet.
No. He tried to say his feet look like Hobbit, and I said, how dare you disrespect Hobbits like that?
They're peeling now.
I've been moisturizing, all right?
Oh, guys, a lot of aloe vera. All right, listen. All right, we're going to get...
He took some aloe from the garden.
Produce, though.
It's all produce related. We're talking about
is sunscreen made from some type of produce item?
Coconut.
I'm sorry. I'm going to cry. You're making me cry. It was hilarious. All right, Maddie, thank you so much. And I say we get this started, John.
Absolutely. So welcome, everybody. Thanks for being back and joining us. We took a little hiatus last month, but for good reason. We were very busy, right? We were kind of all over. Well, you were all over the place. I joined you for
what day was it? What month was it? I don't even know.
Well, we were doing a lot. I mean, like I said, we were in Philadelphia.
We were in Philadelphia. We had, oh my gosh, we traveled a lot last month.
We were recording a lot.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. We did the Olympic series.
Oh my gosh.
Which hopefully all of you have been listening to and enjoying. We have 2 more episodes dropping tomorrow, which will complete the Olympics. Even though the closing ceremony was last night, you will get to enjoy the Olympics for one more time tomorrow. The finale.
I like that. I really like that though. I think
I thought that was a lot of fun. I mean, I had a fun time recording those. I got to exercise my linguistics, different languages.
You definitely did. My wife was like, "Who is talking?" I go, "That's John." She's like, "How did he sounds so real?" I was like, "He is real. I'm
a real boy."
I was like, "Listen, Renee, he's been to our house." I was like, "She's like, no, you know what I mean." And I was like, "Yeah, I know." I was like, "I know what you mean." I go, I poked him one time.
Yeah,
I poked you on TikTok the other day too.
Poked me a lot. Yes, we had the Olympics, man. But so that's complete. That was 13 episodes in 17 days. So that's a lot. So hopefully you got your fill on history of fresh produce. But we will be returning with some fresh content outside the Olympics. Coming up, we'll have an episode on the Mongols.
That's going to be fun.
It's going to be
and then what about my favorite?
And then, of course,
it's funny because I haven't done any research on this, but how many times have we talked and I'm telling you scenes from the movie, and you're like, I don't think you need to watch the movie again, Pat. There's a lot going on, but we are going to have a Lord of the Rings episode, everyone. Yes. So we're gonna explore some of my favorite pop cultures, right, with Lord of the Rings and what they had in there, and then also. Which brings you into the Ring of Power. We're coming up on season 2 of the Ring of Power. But again, if you've watched some of our other live streams, we're trying to have fun with showing you fact or fiction, right? We did Disney, which was awesome, right? We got to explore that. Now we're going to explore a little bit of Lord of the Rings, the time period. Was that fruit real? What is lambus bread, everyone? There is so much to talk about with Lord of the Rings.
There is. There
but
really
just
is.
hold on, because myself as William, I can't, as the kid here today, I gotta hold my tongue. Sorry, Dad. Sorry.
Take it easy.
My bad. I was getting excited.
Yeah, so we'll save the Lord of the Rings talk for a little bit later, so you guys can look forward to that.
All right.
Today we're going to talk about our little field trip that we took together when we were in Philadelphia to a very special garden, who is said to be the oldest botanical garden in America, founded by who is often considered America's first botanist, John Bartram, which is my namesake tonight. You're my son, William Bartram, who also will feature.
Yes, sir.
You are going to hear a short episode about because we actually did record a podcast when we were on site
100%.
with the lead gardener for that. So you will hear that, but we're going to just delve into a few more things tonight, kind of our experience walking through the gardens, and give you a little history context as well. So this will think of it like a pairing, like cheese and wine.
We're gonna have a couple of weeks of Bartram's Garden. So if you follow the podcast at all, normally what John and I do, we'll have live streams, right? Not just the history of fresh produce, but a lot of our shows, right? So we'll have a live stream, we'll have video content, you'll see the short videos, and then sometimes we don't even release the podcast for weeks after until all the videos are done. Because again, some people like to watch, John, right? And some people like to listen, which is, I always tell everybody that. They're like, do your YouTube followers follow you on your podcast? I go, sometimes no, John, because guess what? They'd rather be right here watching. And I'll be right here waiting for you. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, that's what's cool about it. So stay tuned, everyone, because we have a lot from Bartram's Garden. We've got video, we've got more audio, and we have more short clips, and we're going to introduce you to that lead gardener, which what I loved about it is, and we're going to get right into this after I say this, what I loved about what the lead gardener said was that she feels like she is passing on the teachings from what she learned from the previous generation. And man, if we could all just take a moment to take that in, to pass the baton and be able to teach those lessons to the next generation. I don't even think she cared about her paycheck. I don't even think she cared about her well-being. What she cared about most was preserving this beautiful land and teaching about it to future generations.
Yeah, the story and what it means and the significance of it all, and making sure it survives. And that's why we here at History of Fresh Produce love history, because it is that story, retelling these stories and appreciating these stories, and in turn appreciating what we have today and making sure it
100%. So what do you think? Should we show them a little bit of Bartram's Garden? Should we start this presentation, get it going, or
let's go? Let's take our trip.
Look,
so there it is. And I will say most of these pictures were taken by ourselves. So there are going to be a few a little bit later on that were obviously not taken by us. But this is a picture we took while we were there. So this is
not to be judged.
The house of John Bartram. And so let me give a little context of who John Bartram is.
Please.
We're talking about him a lot, right? So John Bartram, real quick, he was born into a Quaker family in colonial Marple, Pennsylvania, which is near modern-day Philadelphia, on March 23rd, 1699. And he was a third-generation Pennsylvania Quaker. So his family's been there for a while, obviously one of the first settlers in the Americas with the British settlers. And he was a man that just loved the field of botany from a very early age. And that's despite really lack of any formal education. He basically just had local schooling, which is basically very simple schooling. But he was really interested not only in botany as a whole, but specifically the medicinal elements of it. So how you could use plants and medicine together. And he loved to read. So he would teach himself to read, and he would read a lot of books. And, that's how you can gain knowledge. And so another piece to all of this, because, why would he love botany? So obviously there's you can just love something because you have a passion for it. But there's also, I think, a cultural element to it as well. So Quakers generally believe in the simplicity and respect for nature. So this also obviously may have influenced this passion for plants. So Fast forward to 1728, so he would be about 29 years old. He purchases, and the lead gardener, you'll hear on the podcast, she corrects me because I thought he inherited it, but he purchased it, 102 acres of farmland and about 10.5 acres of marshland along the Schuylkill, I think that's how you say it, Schuylkill River, from a bunch of Swedish settlers who are on this plot of land. So that's the land that these gardens are on today that we visited. And so, as you saw in this house in our lead picture, and you'll see in the next picture, I believe, this is the house that John actually began building with stone after he purchased the land in 1728. And he was actually pretty crafty with stone, from what I understood. He was good with the hand and carving stone and shaping stone. And again, I'm not a mason, so I don't know all the terms, but he was good with stone. And he basically built up this house to illustrate kind of classical Italian villas. You can see kind of elements of them there. He, carved iconic columns and Baroque window surrounds. Again, a lot of that's kind of outside my wheelhouse, but here you can see me obviously there standing in the doorway. So you can see a little ornamental factors in there. And so when you walk onto the column porch, you can actually find yourself at John Bartram's front door, and that's facing east towards the Schuylkill River. So I'm actually standing there on the back side. It looks like the front side today because that's where the road is, but back in the 1700s, the house would face the river because that was the main mode of transportation and getting to somewhere. So,
I think
in
that's
his day,
cool
again,
too.
the traffic was downtown Philadelphia, right? And they would primarily ride by river, and so that's where the house
Well, it's
entry
so
would be.
true, John, because jumping in, I was looking at this first picture right here in the Welcome
Yes,
Center,
welcome.
and you were so right because everyone that this park is completely turned around. And then watching more about history on it, they had to flip it around because of modern society, like you said, because everybody would travel on the steamboats, and you get off on the steamboats, right? There were, or if you were on horse and carriage, right, it'd be coming in on a different side. But yeah,
Exactly.
we were technically, you're right. That's their backyard. I mean, and it's funny is just beyond those two bushes right there, I was standing in a beautiful garden when I took this picture.
Yes. Yeah, actually, so that where you were standing, so directly in front, so if you were standing where I was and looking out,
Yep,
that is the common flower garden, and that was basically a living collection of flowering plants that John and his son William, they
that's me.
found that really interesting because they kind of just started planting different flowers and plants and seeing how, things kind of worked and looked.
How does
Um,
this work?
and then on the other side of the house, so on the back side of the house, which is where I took a picture of you, Patrick.
Yeah,
This is where you were. I think this is the next slide. There you are. This is the
I look so
kitchen garden.
happy.
Yeah, you're chilling.
I look
It
so
was, it was a
happy.
hot day. It was a hot day.
It
You
was
were
a
complaining a lot, and you're from Florida. I didn't think it was so bad, but you were
dude.
hot.
Yeah, it was hot. It was hot. You're right, and I am from Florida. Thanks for telling everybody.
But that where you're standing there, that's the kitchen garden. And again, that would have been in the front of the house.
Right.
And that was uh yeah, I mean that was an essential piece to a lot of homes back in that era. That would have been the essential to any household survival and the main source of vegetables and fruits and herbs throughout the year. And what was neat about the garden there that they had is they preserved a lot. Well, not preserved, obviously, it's not the actual plants for the 1700s, but they were growing plants that Bartram would have been growing for the most part there, along with some other local and exotic things that might have been interesting to Bartram at that time. So that was a nice recreation of what you could have maybe expected to see during Bartram's lifetime. Um, so that gives you a little concept of the home of Bartram and his immediate surrounding perimeter of his garden. But going back to Bartram himself, so he started his botanical career by devoting a small area of his farm to growing plants he found interesting, including obviously the flower garden in the front and then the kitchen garden. But beyond that, there was obviously a lot more land there where he's growing and experimenting with a lot of things. So he would basically go around the surrounding countryside. Because remember, in the 1700s, a lot of this was wilderness. It wasn't built up. It was, you step outside your door and you could walk 2 miles and you're just in the middle of the woods and wild. So he would basically just go in the surrounding countryside and forage for local plants. And he would bring those back into his garden and experiment with them, figure out what they are, how they grow, all these different things. And he actually would do this not just for himself, but for his good friends. And one of those good friends happened to be Benjamin Franklin, and another individual by the name of Joseph Brentnall, who are also very interested in nature and indigenous plants and specimens. So yeah, he was having a good time doing what he loved, and supporting his friends' interests, who basically had the same interests as him. So this garden started getting cultivated in 1728, the same year that he bought and started building his house. And like I touched on, this wasn't just about beauty. This wasn't just about building something beautiful, for as beautiful as I'm sure it was. It was also a botanical laboratory. So he could study the plants, not just from the New World, but he would also get plants from beyond. And we'll get into that. But the concept of a botanical garden in America at this time was virtually unheard of. Bartram's garden basically was the first of its kind on the continent at this point. And for that reason, it became basically a hub for collection and study of all sorts of North American plants. And so, in addition, again, to local things, he would ask later on for outside plants outside the continent to experiment with within North America as well. Um, but yeah, we'll get into that. But before I pass it on to you, Patrick, I also want to mention that Bartram, in addition to kind of experimenting at home, he would actually go on to influence the introduction of many plant species to Europe. And that would actually change the landscape of Europe for a lot of the elites and the wealthy, uh, properties there, the lords and whatnot of England. So, but why don't you tell us now a little bit about what, a little more in depth of what his influence on horticulture and ag was, because there's quite a lot there.
No, I mean there is, and I want to give you one more shot of the garden without me. But what I love about this is your backyard could be such a safe haven for your food.
Oh yeah.
And I've tried it, and I have a lot of squirrels and raccoons that love to eat all my Florida peaches. And I thought to myself, like, the way I'm going to do this is I got to like build like a little greenhouse, like, you know what I mean? Because there's a lot of land here in Florida that there's a lot of wild animals. So I think this is amazing because it truly shows you where your food comes from and gives you an idea of how they literally would, it depending on what you're making for the night, you can literally step outside and go grab it. Versus like tonight, I called my wife on the way home as I was picking up one of my kids. I was like, hey, onions, peppers. Like I started like naming off things we needed to make hamburgers tonight. And, imagine if you had this. I mean, so think about that in the future. But if we look at Bartram's influence on horticulture and ag, I think that's where we start to really see what it was about. Now, John, not you, okay? We're talking about the OG John,
the real John,
at this point. Let's talk about him for a second, okay? John Bartram was more like than a botanist, okay? And he wasn't just a botanist and a plant collector. He was more than that, right? So he was one of the first American botanists, okay? And that's what's so cool about this is that we get to see someone in a light that we probably never have before. So one of the first American botanists to correspond with leading scientists in Europe like Carl Linnaeus, the Swedish biologist who formalized bionomial nomenclature, modern system for naming organisms. Okay. This helped spread knowledge of American flora worldwide. And then we have, we're going too fast here. We have John, sorry, and then
there it is.
William.
That's Mr. William, yeah.
My slide jumped ahead of me. Next time, John, jump in and tell me. I didn't know it jumped so fast. So John's son, William, continued his father's legacy, making significant contributions to botany. Also in natural history, how through his explorations of the American Southeast. So John was responsible for introducing over 200 species of plants. Okay. Over 200, which again, absolutely amazing when you think about that. 200 plants. Wow. Species. Now, these plants were to Europe. So these were including the Franklin tree, which is now extinct in the wild, found during one of Bartram's collecting trips in Georgia, named in honor of John's good friend, Benjamin Franklin. So John's garden wasn't just about ornamental plants. The Bartrams experimented with fruits and vegetables, and we learned a lot about that through the lead gardener, okay, which you will hear about on our podcast. So contributing a lot to the development of cultivation of many varieties that we enjoy today. They documented these plants used in cooking and in medicine. One of the things I want you to be aware of, everyone, when you see our videos coming up, we are inside the records room when we record this as well. So there was history literally surrounding us as we were talking. Okay. And just to show you kind of one of those items that
right on the
very beautiful, very beautiful, huh?
Yeah. Extinct and wild now, though.
Right. So, that's where I think that this land is just amazing. And, so a couple other fun things. So when we were walking the property, we came across a strange stone structure too, which appeared to be
I couldn't figure out what that was initially.
You remember that? Like we were looking at this, like, what is this?
I thought this was some weird formation in the ground. I said,
we had no idea.
Oh, it was fenced in, right? It was fenced. There was a fence around it. So we knew it kind of had to be something. Maybe?
We knew it was I thought it was a big sundial. Like in my head, I was like, this is like the biggest sundial next to the Aztecs. Like we're doing it. But it's actually a cider mill. So the foundations for this riverfront mill were carved from bedrock, everyone. So most likely by John Bartram. Apples were crushed in the circular trench by a wooden wheel, and then the apple pomence was gathered and pressed between wooden boards to further extract the juice. Makes sense when you say it like that. I can completely see it now.
Yeah, now I see it.
This simple mill is an ancient design from Europe and probably processed fruit from orchards maintained by families from throughout the area on both sides of the river too. Because obviously with this being in the bedrock too, one of the things is they're not creating 17 to 20 of these down the riverfront. No, they probably use one or two and then they use them throughout. So really, really cool. I love the fact that they did that. But John, talk to me though a little bit. What did we learn about the role of Bartram's garden though in the colonial and early American society though? Because I think that plays a big part as we keep moving through Bartram's influence on horticulture and ag too.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he, as we kind of briefly touched on, he was, and I said we would get to this, he was communicating a lot with Europe, contacts in Europe to share his findings, and naturally people started getting interested. So it wasn't, again, just about beauty. It was also economic. And so one of the friends that we mentioned earlier on was a fellow Quaker, Joseph Brentnall. This friend actually started corresponding with a London-based Peter Collinson, who's also a Quaker. So all these Quakers seem to know each other one way or another. And this Quaker was actually a clothing merchant who then also shared a passion for plants. So Bartram began sending Collinson boxes of these specimens and plants that he's collecting, on his little trips and around his countryside. And Collinson would then early on repay these boxes he would get in kind with plants from Europe and Britain's empire. So actually one plant that John receives from England as a gift back for his specimens was the Lady Petra pear in 1735 from the wife of Lord Peter, a very wealthy young landowner. And this pear happened to be the Lord's wife's favorite sugar pear. And so Bartram got this seed, he planted it in his property, and the tree actually went on to survive until the latter half, believe it or not, of the 20th century. But the branches were clipped to graft and make new trees. So the tree is basically surviving via its clones still today. And Bartram really loved this pear. Actually, there was a quote from him that says that the pear raised from her seed hath borne a number of the finest relished fruit. I think a better is not in the world. So he was all about this pear, and in terms of the flavor, he even notated what the flavor was. So in addition to the flesh, so he says it was white, soft, juicy, melting like a butter pear, delicious flavor, peculiar, very slightly musky, and vinous. So gives you a little bit of idea of what this pear was like. But what about these Bartram specimens that he was sending all over Europe? Because actually this became quite big, because Collinson started telling his friends back in London as well, oh, look at all these cool specimens getting from America. These are pretty neat things. America's a new territory, to get these plants and seeds, and it was exciting because you didn't know what they were going to look like once you planted them. Nobody knew. Sometimes Bartram didn't even know what these things would end up looking like, because he didn't know at what stage he was necessarily collecting these plants in the wild. So for Europeans, it's very neat thing to have. So obviously this started picking up steam and became a pretty good business for Bartram. So for 5 guineas, clients would receive basically a container of about 100 or more varieties of seeds, as well as an occasional dried plant specimen and other curiosities like birds' nests and rocks. So Bartram was just sticking as many things that he thought were neat into these boxes to send to his European clients. And you have to remember, there's no refrigeration, there's no airplanes, there's no sophisticated sea equipment involved in this. This was all going over in wooden ships back to England. And not only were these in, early vessels, but you also had the risks of seawater getting into these boxes, or rats that might tear open these boxes, and theft by people working the boats, and all these different things. But many actually arrived safely to their destinations, believe it or not. And so these seeds obviously went on to really shape European gardens and landscapes. You'd have, uh, just to give you an idea of what were in these boxes. So they were said to contain seeds for shrubs like laurel, magnolia, rhododendra. You got trees like hickory and tulip and cedar. And then as far as produce, of course, these later boxes included seeds for persimmon, pawpaw, dogwood, black mulberry. So pretty impressive lineup of goods that are coming via Bartram. Now, so Bartram's building up quite the reputation in England now. All these cool plants coming over, people are loving it. And eventually, Collinson and Ben Franklin are sitting in London and say, you know what, Bartram deserves some recognition and maybe a little bit of money for what he's doing here, a little more money even for what he's doing here. So they actually lobby and petition to King George III, that Bartram become appointed royal botanist, and he does. They successfully lobby that. He does get appointed a royal botanist, and that came with a pension of £50 per year, which is pretty decent for that time. And it was a post that Bartram actually went on to hold until his death. So, um, obviously, with that, Bartram is shipping even more seeds and plants. And not only are they going to clients, elite and wealthy clients within England, but it's also going to now the royal collection at Kew Gardens. And if you all heard I think it was our previous live stream when we were talking about holiday destinations, we did talk about Kew. And Kew is a pretty, pretty impressive botanical garden, probably one of the leading botanical gardens probably at that point in history. So Bartram's even getting involved in that arena. So yeah, but let's bring it back home to America. What else is going on in America? Because it's not just England that's getting hyped up on this. You also have very important figures. We talk about Ben Franklin a lot, but you also have George Washington. You have Thomas Jefferson. You actually have the whole Continental Congress that takes break during one of their sessions to visit Bartram's garden and immerse themselves in these curiosities and this. And actually, yeah, you can see the picture here. This wasn't painted in the late 18th century, even though it's portraying the 18th century. This was painted in 1900, but it shows you, Bartram's the guy in the black jacket, and I believe Washington's the guy in the more military attire there with the green jacket. But that's the house. That's the house that you and I were at, Patrick.
On the other side.
Yeah, exactly. Facing the river.
Yep, they're facing the river. So technically, where the bottom right is, where the two are sitting on the bottom right,
would be
behind them would be the actual garden.
Yeah,
yep, 100%.
So during the Revolutionary War, obviously, because this was around, because remember, this property was bought and cultivated in 1728. By the time the Revolutionary War comes around,
Yep.
it actually plays not going to oversell it, but it plays a role in the battle.
Oversell it.
I'm not going to say it was like this this key site in the Revolutionary War, but it did play a role. The British troops end up occupying Philadelphia, if we all know our revolutionary history, and they actually ended up using the garden as a base. But
cool.
But don't start hating on the Bartram family just yet, because they actually end up secretly supporting the American cause, and they pass information to American troops and even smuggled weapons and supplies through the garden. So the Bartrams are good.
Stop hating.
We don't need to be upset with their
stop hating and start participating.
Exactly. So once the revolution finished, the garden also played a crucial role in American Enlightenment. Science and agriculture were seen as ways to build this prosperous nation. We've talked about this a few times in other podcasts that we've done now, when we talked about, when the revolution has appeared, or we're talking about Jefferson. Ag was very important to them. Science was very important to them. So the fusion of those two things, those two things are meeting quite strongly at Bartram's Garden. So that becomes an important focal point in the early days of the nation around ag and science.
I like it.
But what happens next, Patrick? Because eventually, it's actually only a year after the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah, it's very true. Now, let's be real, though. Let's bring it back. We're going to go back just John, a month. Listen, one of the fun things of being in Philadelphia is the rich history in Philadelphia. And one of the things that we got to do, which John did not get to do too much of it, was obviously because we were on a crazy time schedule. But he did get to drive past Ben Franklin's gravesite. And that was also a historical site, man. Like if you go through there, you can just see history right there. And then we got to see Betsy Ross's house as well. The flag maker. I keep getting yelled at for calling her a flag maker. You flag maker. No, but Betsy Ross is right down the street from where Benjamin Franklin is actually buried. And most people think they're like, I don't understand, all these people in places. Listen, they were all normal people that lived in the city. We all idolize these people, and as they were celebrities or whatever you want to call them, but they all live, breathe, and ate and died just like all of us will. But it is also iconic to see some of the people that were founding fathers and where they hung out, and you start to think to yourself, man, I don't hang out there. Well, you're also not a founding father though either. So but I think that's really cool, just to kind of take a step back and realize that we were walking the same path that some of the past presidents and past leaders and the people that built this country, I'm not going to say that it is today, but pretty much as much as it can be as it is today.
You had the whole Continental Congress at that point going out on a field trip to a farm, essentially.
You'll never see that again. The closest thing we got to that was Obama visiting the national parks. That was the closest we got. Okay, everyone, that was the closest we got. Seriously. But I will tell you before we go, we have had governors like Arnold Schwarzenegger that came down to our citrus groves. When I was in the Central Valley of California, so people do visit, but it's always got to be at a detrimental time, never just to do it. You know what I mean? So as we move through the garden's evolution through the 19th and the 20th century, okay, which obviously is a big deal. Bartram died at home in Kingsing. That's a tough one. Kingsing on September 22nd, 1777. Look at this. I'm jumping around, everyone. Bartram died September 22nd, 1777. Who is messing with the teleprompter? No, I'm just kidding. That's on me. But he was buried at the Darby Friends Cemetery. His estate and nursery business survived him and continued to thrive under the care of his sons, John Jr. and William, and John Jr.'s daughter, Anne. So after the Bartram family's stewardship, due to financial reasons in 1850, the North American plants no longer commanding a premium in England, the garden fell into decline in the 19th century as the area became more industrialized. Okay. And this is the type of industrialization that you'll see. You know, John, we didn't show this particular scene, but the riverfront
That's Philly, yeah.
is not so much a riverfront anymore. I mean, it is, and you can see some of the old docks that were here, but the city is no more than 15 miles away.
Yeah.
I mean, the city is encroaching more and more and more.
Well, even in the driving up to the gardens, it was very, built up.
Oh,
You know,
100%.
it's just kind
Yeah,
of an
the
oasis
whole
in the middle of
garden,
yeah.
it's made for tourists now. Let's be real.
Mhm.
I mean, it's made for tourists, but I thought that was an amazing shot. I mean, I'm glad we walked all the way down there to see this. We have an amazing shot of John too. He didn't want to put that in there, but it is like his candid shot should be on all of his profiles. But as we keep moving forward, okay, and in I believe it was 1891, the garden was saved from destruction by a group of Philadelphia citizens and eventually became a public park. We've seen that a lot today with certain, I would say, areas. Today, the garden is vibrant and it's a public space, as you saw, as you saw before, John, and that leads us back to, I mean, even the beginning picture with you at the Welcome Center. They've got a shop in here, everyone. They've got bathrooms, they've got walking trails. I mean, this is not like you're going to go here and be like, "Whoa, what did we get ourselves into?" No, I mean, this is legitimately a garden, a park that you get to walk through. So if you look at, as we keep moving forward to today, and I'll show you a quick shot of, where we are today. Here's the garden. Now, there are educational programs at the garden that teach urban farming skills, and I think this is what's so cool. So there is a community farm here. So Sankofa Community Farm and Orchard that provide fresh, locally grown produce to the community. Yeah. There it is. Simple. Everyone, if I can tell you anything, a garden is simple. It doesn't have to be high tech. It doesn't have to go crazy. All you need is, I'm going to tell you, there's about 3 to 5 simple ingredients to growing, okay? You need a seed, you need soil, you need water, some sun, and a lot of love, okay? I'm just saying, a lot of love.
Worked for millennia.
Love goes into everything, okay? But yeah, so it's 3.5 acres, community-based crop farm, rooted in the experience of the African diaspora. So farm offers, check this out, John, 60 different crops and wild foods for the community's healing, and produces over 15,000 pounds of food annually to local farms. So what's cool about it is you'll see these farm stands and you'll see them in other markets with that 15,000 pounds. Yeah. So the garden is a living museum, everyone. I love that we said that. Preserving the history of American horticulture, okay? And that is the coolest thing about this garden. It is, John, I love that you said that. It's a living museum, and it is also a living legacy of Bartram himself right here at the garden. So amazing. Honestly, I had a blast. One of the things that I can tell you that I most appreciated, and I would tell you out of the entire Bartram's garden, seriously, was walking it.
Yeah.
I just enjoyed getting out in nature and just relaxing. I mean, some of the things that, we never get to do, we're always on technology. But again, I was in St. Louis just a few weeks ago as well. And we were on a river rafting trip and someone said, "Man, you haven't spoken the whole time. Is everything okay?" And I said, "I wish I would have brought binoculars." And the guy goes, "I'm so confused." And I said, "It's so beautiful out." I said, "Listening to the stream, the birds, I wish I would have brought binoculars." He goes, "You can interact with the other 75 people here." I said, "No, I am." I said, "But very rarely do we get to take it all in." And, I left my phone at the cabin. I left everything, man. I just brought myself, and heck, even forgot food. Like, you know what I mean? I just brought myself. But I think that's the one thing. What would you say your favorite thing was of walking through the garden? Or the park, I would say. The park, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's like when I go to any historical site, you try to appreciate where it started and everything that it kind of represented and who's passed through there and what it all means. You try to transport yourself to the footsteps, like you said, of the founding fathers and Bartram himself, and try to imagine what life was like during that period, because they really do a good job maintaining the appearance of how and that property would have looked like during Bartram's time, and how, I want to say sad, but how shocking still how a lot of Americans don't probably even still know about this garden. I mean, this is America's oldest botanical garden. Everyone
No way.
knows about the New York Botanical Garden, and I'm sure a lot of other big city botanical gardens, but this is America's oldest botanical garden, and it has such a rich history and a story that's pretty darn fascinating, which,
It is.
we've hopefully done a little bit of justice tonight on, but and you can access it. It's not, I don't think it costs any money to enter the garden, right? I think it's a public
No,
park.
it's free.
You can enter it, and you can really appreciate and see a lot there. So I think it's definitely, if you're on the East Coast, it's definitely a site to check. And if you're ever in the Philadelphia area, it's not far from the airport, right? I mean,
No.
it was what, half an hour at most.
Yeah, I mean, with traffic, yeah.
So,
I mean, it was pretty easy.
it's a really nice site. So I'm glad we had a chance to visit it. I hope
Yep.
everyone here got a little bit of a flavor of it, and maybe inspired to visit themselves one day. Tell them that John and Patrick sent you.
We don't know if that'll do anything for you.
Probably not. It probably wouldn't mean
Definitely
anything.
think
Who is
you
that?
should.
Yeah,
We don't know what that'll do for you, but it'll do enough.
But that's the story of Bartram. Like I said, we will have another episode with the lead gardener telling a little more. Hopefully, we didn't repeat too much of what that conversation entailed. I think she touched on.
I don't think so.
But before we let everybody go tonight, Patrick, because I know you have to go as well, so I'm not going to keep
Get me out of here, everyone. People, if you know anything right now, it's August 12th, and John still has little ones, but my kids are like 12 and 9, and they are all back in school as of today. So this is like first night that everybody needs to get to bed, and I'm here live streaming. And my beautiful wife is at home thinking about killing me. Oh, no, of course. But no, it's one of those things, John, as you know. Real quick though, I want to throw this up, that it's our man Dan Weiss. Dan is a great guy in our industry as well. And appreciate the new education guys. No, Dan, appreciate you for watching. Because this is, a part of our history in the fresh produce industry. That's what's so cool about it. So definitely, we tip our hats off to guys like you. That's why I watch your podcasts. You always learn something new, and thank you for what you do. I got to meet Dan at the Southeast Produce Council Southern Exposure this last year, and it was great. It was actually really great. So had a good time. John Bartram,
I've disappeared.
John, you've disappeared, man. I don't know
I've
where
gone black.
I've
gone dark. That's the term. I've gone dark. I don't know why.
We're going to keep you on, but we're just not going to show it.
You're just going to hear my voice. I'm going to be isolated, but
yeah, we're gonna. I mean, pretty soon we're gonna have to give John like a distorted voice too.
Oh, you know what it is? I got an alert that I have an update for my camera.
Oh gosh, that's what he gets, everyone. All right, well, listen, John, why don't you? There's a couple things. Why don't you go over them?
We'll
at least go over the British Podcast Awards, and I'll cover the rest.
Yeah, so there is something called the British Podcast Awards, where you can write in.
Yep.
It has to be an actual podcast. It can't be like Patrick Kelly. It
Yeah.
has to be an actual podcast. It's a listener's choice. So we will share that again. I don't know. We'll probably post that on LinkedIn or our social channels. You can vote, I think, until the end of the month. We'll provide that information. Appreciate it if you would like to give us a vote. So again, it's not just about the produce industry podcast, the history of fresh produce, but the industry. I think, to me, it would be really neat to have the fresh produce industry represented on that kind of a stage.
Yeah, we do.
So that's
baby.
what it's about. We want to represent the industry and let people know we're here.
Who we are, what we do. We'll put that link up in our feeds. We'll put it in the comments of the live stream as well. after it's done and allows us to put comments in. And yeah, I agree. Let's get fresh produce and agriculture and farming on the list. I always seem to see, cooking shows and it's crazy as it sounds, crime shows and all this different stuff, but we never
politics,
the fresh produce. So let's try to do that. And also, everyone, remember, History of Fresh Produce Club. If you are a History of Fresh Produce Club member, then you got to enjoy all of the episodes on demand as you wanted. So you get to play them whenever you want, however you want, right there in the mobile application. So all you got to do, everyone, is download the Produce Industry Podcast mobile app on your Android and or Apple device. Okay. And then you get to go in and find the History of Fresh Produce Club, which we have, and you will get all of the fun. And also, don't forget, I always forget to say this, our Produce Idiom shirts, more and more are coming up on the website. So please stay tuned as we have more of them coming. We'll throw that up there as well. It's the Produce Industry Podcast. .com, and you'll see the merch site there. So please go ahead and click on that as well. And thank you to the listeners, everyone, for your support. We love doing this. We have an amazing time doing this. We don't do this because we're paid to do it, right, John? We do this because we love doing it.
We do. We do. And the payment that we get is your support through comments on what we're doing, good or bad. We appreciate it all. We appreciate 100%. The likes, the reviews, the subscriptions. All of it means a lot to us. Gives us the will.
Gives us the keep on coming back for more. Either way, you listen or not, we're coming back. So
we are. So yeah, we will let you all get on with your evening. Thank you again for being here. Stay tuned. We have a lot more fun episodes.
And John will be here.
Yeah, I will. I won't be dark forever. I promise.
Shout out to John Bartram.
Look,
from the grave.
At least my voice is there and you don't just see my face. I think that the other way would be worse.
At least there's no echoes. That's what you should have said.
All right. Well, on that note, have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you next time. It's goodbye from me, John Papp.
And me, Patrick Kelly.